Alright guys, welcome back. Today we have an '04 Pontiac Bonneville and runs like shit. I believe it's possibly a blown head gasket. It could be some other things, but I'm going to show you why I think it's a head gasket instead of just making it a head gasket video. I'm hoping that it turns out this to be an upper and lower intake video, but the way it's running and the looks of the fluids makes me think that it's going to be all the way down to the head gasket that I have to replace. So I'm going to show you some of the things I got going on with it. That way you kind of know what to look for if you think that you might have a blown head gasket. And as I go along, we'll be able to hopefully tell if it's an upper intake or lower intake or what it may be. Alright, so we all know this motor, this famous 3.8 motor. This one happens to be in a Bonneville in an '04. This is the radiator. As you can tell, it's pretty sludged up. I don't know if I can get it to focus a little better to get the idea. And then in the overflow, it's pretty brown in there. Can't really see in the overflow, but you get the idea from the radiator. The oil itself, when I pop this off, there's quite a bit of, I already ran it for about 30 seconds to get it in the garage. When I popped it off, there was a decent amount of steam. The oil doesn't seem to be getting fuller. It's staying about the same, and it doesn't look too bad, but there's definitely oil in the antifreeze. Pretty much the upper intake, I know they had a recall. I don't know on what year. It might be broken. I won't know. Broken and warped or whatever when I get in there. And then on this side, there's obviously that. On the lower intake, across the two heads right there, there's this flat spot that always leaks. The water outlets don't seem to be leaking on this, so I guess that's a plus. The only other thing that could really cause the coolant and oil to mix is in the radiator itself. It could be coolant and transmission fluid, but I don't believe that's even close to what's going on. Tranny fluid looks good, and the previous owner, the guy I just bought this from, hit a deer a couple years back on this side, and he said he replaced the radiator, which it looks fairly new, not stock, so I doubt that any tranny fluid's the problem. I'm just trying to show you guys a little bit of the things that I'm going through right now, which makes me want to replace some gaskets. I still haven't determined if it's the head gasket or upper or lower intake. I just bought this car about 10 hours ago for $250. Brought it home, see if I could fix it up. So I put this scanner on here, see if I can get it to focus for you guys. Just I was curious of what kind of codes I was getting because the motor's running like crap. So this is just your basic $10, $15, $10, $15 code reader. Alright, we got O2 sensors. Now this is one I pretty much knew I was going to get because it's misfiring pretty bad. I'm not sure if it's just because of the gasket problem or if I have something going on with the plugs and stuff. I will find out. O2 sensors. Alright, this code right here, system 2 lean bank 1, means we got a vacuum leak somewhere, which could be a good thing. It might just be an upper or lower intake. seems how we are getting a code for a vacuum leak. So that's a good thing to watch out for if you're wondering if you have a head gasket, a blown head gasket, or if you are lucky and only have a upper or lower intake problem. This is a code to kind of point you in a direction of an intake problem over a head gasket. And then just more misfires. So those are the codes that I'm getting. So we will start the car. Maybe hear it for a minute. What it sounds like. Can't let it run too long. Alright, so showed you the codes that I'm getting, and I tried to let you hear what it sounds like just so you get an idea. It hasn't overheated yet, and I drove it, I think it was like 40 miles. I drove it home at, 50, 55 miles an hour. It's definitely coolant and oil mixing. And with that code that I showed you, it means there's, on bank 1 I believe it said, there's an air leak, which is probably coming from the upper intake, I would assume. I'll have to take it apart and show you guys and see what happens. I've got the head gasket already from a project before on a 3.8 where I bought, it was a Grand Prix, and the guy told me it had a blown head gasket. It was only a $200 car, so I didn't really look into it. So I just ordered the parts, and it ended up just being the upper intake was warped. And so I just did the upper and lower on it and fixed the problem. I got some gaskets left over from that, so I left that on this car. All I really have to do is buy the head bolts and fluids. So yeah, the next step will be me taking apart the upper intake. Alright, so when it comes to taking this off, a couple things. People talk about hidden bolts. I couldn't really I only found one bolt that was kind of hidden, but it wasn't too bad to find. If you're standing in front of the car, up by the throttle body on the back side, this is right here. That bolt is hidden behind this plate right here that goes around the EGR. Once you go to unbolt this, there's a bolt that comes off. So that's the only bolt that's hidden, is behind the EGR plate. I think it's like a heat shield around your EGR, and it holds a couple wiring harnesses connect to it. But besides that, it's pretty straightforward. Like my back 3 bolts, I didn't even have to use a ratchet. I just undid it by hand, so they weren't even tight. So I'm pretty sure, I'm almost 100% sure that's where my air leak was coming from. But I'm pretty confident I'm going to stop right here and replace just this upper gasket, and it's going to fix my problem. I'll show you the reasons why. These two right here, these 2 ports right here, completely flat and gone. And all the rubber around, all the way around on the gaskets is gone. So I'm pretty sure my problem is coming from the upper intake. In the code that I showed you, the P0171 code that I mentioned in the beginning of the video, usually most of the time it's a fuel code, but I'm pretty sure it's from this gasket sucking air in. So I'm going to clean this up. Here's the new gasket. These are raised up on both sides. There's a raise on all the rubber part. The way it's supposed to be, compared to the old ones flat. And another thing, when I was taking stuff apart, that was, let me know it probably might not be a head gasket, is you can see where the coolant was coming right out of the throttle body. You got brownish looking antifreeze, and your antifreeze is disappearing. Pretty much mimics a head gasket, and you won't know until you take that off and look. Either you get lucky or you don't. Alright, here we are back inside the Bonneville. Got the upper intake put back on, everything cleaned up. I ended up having to clean the mass airflow sensor. As you seen earlier in the video, there was some coolant that was getting in there, so I cleaned that up. Seems to be running pretty good now. There's no more misfire or anything. There's no coolant getting into the plugs. Flushed the radiator, changed the oil, did all the good stuff, and I'll show you guys how it sounds now compared to what it did sound like. Check engine lights off. Motor's not jumping around, jerking around like it was. No overheating. It's kind of dark out, but at least you can hear it. Pulled it out the garage and take it for a spin to make sure everything was alright. So before you change your head gasket, just kind of go over all the other possibilities to try to save yourself some money. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe, and come back for the next video.